Okay. Hey everyone, whoever is watching this, I'm actually live on Facebook right now and I'm live on YouTube, so I probably will do this like back and forth thing for a little bit. Okay. So, welcome to my live of globetrotting like a goddess and how to plan your first solo trip. Ideally, this is for women who want to travel by themselves or women who have traveled solo. I remember when I first started traveling, I did family trips, which were great. And then I was very fortunate to have a best friend who I traveled with. But it's definitely a different experience when you travel by yourself. And it is definitely a different experience when you travel to a different country by yourself. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do that and some tips and tricks that I have learned along the way to just make this experience more enjoyable because it can be really scary to travel by yourself, especially as a woman. I think it can be really scary, and the world is big and beautiful, but it's not always safe. Like, let's be realistic. So if you are listening, you might want to grab like a pen and a paper to take some notes. I am going to, all the information that I'm sharing, I'm going to, oh, this is cool. And like waving to people on, I've never really done live before, so this is cool. After the webinar, I'm going to write up all the information that I'm talking about for you, put it in a PDF. So if you're listening and want that information, I can email it to you. So a little bit about myself, if you don't know a little bit about my history. Hi, how are you? What is my history? So I grew up in California and I love California and it's great. But I think from a very young age, I'm gonna wave to people. My parents instilled in me this love for travel. When I was little, I have memories of going to Mexico. I think one of my best memories in Mexico was playing on the beach, playing soccer on the beach with people that we just met, swimming in the ocean, just spending like hours and hours in the ocean. So I think from a very young age, I loved traveling and just fell in love with it. So I first started traveling with friends. I remember my first time. I'm good. I'm glad you're doing well. My first time traveling, where was I trying to go? I was like, I need to get out of my city. Hey, Simon. Hi, Carla. When I first started traveling, I was like, oh my God, I need to get out of my city. I don't know if anyone has ever felt that way, right? Like you love your city, you love things, but you just like, you need to get out. You want to see the world, you want to do things. So I remember my first trip, I think I took with a friend and we went to New York and it was amazing. And then I think my first international trip was to Costa Rica. And it was a group trip, it was a volunteer trip. And that was scary, but I remember the feeling of sitting in the car and like just driving down the highway and just like in utter disbelief that I was in this new country. I was like, what? It felt so weird having spent most of your life or all of your life in one country and then to transport yourself to a different country. It's just like, you feel like a bird. Like I think that's how birds must feel when they are flying. To be able to like start from one place and be able to go to another place is amazing. So I've been solo traveling, I think, for maybe 3 years, and then now I'm living abroad. So I've been abroad for a year and a half. So I've been to Mexico, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Colombia, many places, a lot of places in Latin America by myself. And I love traveling. I love traveling either with one other person or by myself, because it's just, I don't know, it's that freedom of being able to do what you want when you want when you're traveling by yourself. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So when you are traveling by yourself, I think the hardest thing is choosing a destination. And you want to choose something that you connect with. A lot of the times, like, you hear about places that people have been to, and that's great. But you want to really truly pick a place that you can connect to. Like, there's some, like, I know that I do not like cold places, so I probably will not travel to a cold place anytime soon. I like being warm. I like the heat. So going to places that are cold are probably not on my list. Like, I met some friends from Germany, and they're like, come visit us. And I'm like, I will come visit you in the summertime because I do not like going to places that are cold. So really, it's important to travel to a place that you connect with their environment. Like, I love being in nature and I love being surrounded by nature. So when I'm choosing a place to go to, especially by myself, I choose a place that has nature that I can connect with. Also, when you're planning your trip, make sure that you talk to people that have been there. Don't just talk to people that, and that's just the tricky thing, is that when you decide to solo travel, you have to be careful who you talk to, because some people will say, yes, go do it, that's amazing. And then some people will say, like, are you sure? Is that safe? Do you really want to go by yourself? And it is completely okay to go by yourself. Granted, there are some places that aren't really that safe, maybe because of war, maybe just because political environments, but 90% of the time, probably more, the places that you think are scary are not that scary. I remember when I went to Colombia for the first time, I didn't ever even, when I was living in the United States, I never even thought to go to Colombia, because all the things that I heard were like drugs, it's drugs, it's dangerous, mafia, like all these things. And yeah, so I never thought of going there. And then when I moved to Panama, everyone's like, you have to go to Colombia. Colombia is great. The people are amazing. And it is. And I'm so glad that I did not listen to people that had never been there and just watched like Narcos and thought that it was a horrible place. And that I actually talked to people that have been there and have traveled there and found out what it was like. I think another thing that has helped me to travel to a place is Facebook groups. Before I even moved to Panama, there's like different Facebook groups called expats in Panama. Hi, Sergio. Hi, Verena. What was I going to say? Yeah, so there's different Facebook groups. If you have a destination that you want to go to, especially if you're traveling by yourself, there is probably a Facebook group, and you can add yourself to that Facebook group, and then you can really just ask people like, hey, I am wanting to plan a trip to this place, people that live there, people that have been there, can you give me advice, send me a message. That is one thing that really helped me move to Panama, because I moved to Panama, I didn't know, I think I knew 2 people in the entire country. And it was funny because when people asked me, they're like, do you have family in Panama? Do you have friends in Panama? And I was like, I literally moved to Panama with knowing like 2 people. And now I actually have a pretty good circle of friends, a pretty big circle of friends here. But Facebook groups are wonderful, and they make you feel good because they make you feel safe, because you can actually talk to people who are either living in that country that you want to visit or have visited there at least. Let's see. Another thing when you're thinking about a destination or planning your trip is thinking about what you want to gain from that trip or what you need that trip for. I think that's what's going to make the trip more meaningful. Because really and truly, if you're just looking to go relax at a beach, or if you're just looking to like take some pretty pictures, you can do that almost anywhere. You don't have to go that far. But sometimes you need to go on a trip because you need to reconnect to yourself. Sometimes you are curious about your heritage or your roots. I know that I've had some friends who've traveled back to like the Philippines or to Mexico because they want to connect with their heritage. Maybe you just want to, I don't know, just reconnect with something, discover something new, learn something. Maybe you want to learn about a culture. Maybe you want to visit a culture that's completely different from your own culture. So really think about like what you need from that trip, what you need, what you want to gain. I think that'll help when you're planning a trip. Let's see. I'm trying to think of anything else that you need from the trip. So once you decide where you want to go, another thing that you might want to do is do like an itinerary. I always go back and forth. Sometimes I like to just go to a country and just like show up and just like whatever happens, happens. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. It's always good to have an itinerary. And if your itinerary, the biggest thing to remember is to not overdo it. A lot of the times, I remember feeling this way when I first started traveling. I was like, I want to do everything. I want to see everything. I have to like, every day, like 10 activities a day. I have to go see everything. No, you don't. The truth of the matter is you cannot do it all. You can do a lot. Absolutely, you can do a lot in whatever amount of time that you have. But it's kind of like rushing, like when you put too many things on your trip, it's like rushing through a meal. It's like imagine someone prepares this beautiful meal for you. You have your main dish, you have side dishes, you have salads, you have gourmet salads, you have gourmet pasta, and hey Rex, and you have all of these wonderful foods in this dinner, and you just eat everything super fast. That's what it's like if you overplan your trip. If you try to do this like itinerary with 10 different activities, so don't overdo it. When you're planning your trip, when you're putting together your itinerary, don't overdo it. You can't do everything. Just try to decide maybe like 2 or 3 things at most that you really want to do. Because the truth of the matter is, things are not always going to go to plan, or things may not be as you thought they were going to be. Sometimes it rains. If you're traveling in South America, it's most likely going to rain. Central America, Central South America, it's most likely going to rain. Sometimes there's weather. So just try to choose, when you're thinking about things to do, try to choose something that that you really want to do no matter what. So that way, if you don't do all the things, at least if you do the one thing that you really want to do, I think you'll leave your trip feeling more satisfied and happier than if you're like, oh, I didn't get to do this, I didn't get to do that. And that's okay. Like sometimes, and I've had those trips where I've come back and they're like, did you go there? Did you try to do this? Did you go ziplining? Did you do this? But since my answer is no, I didn't do that. And it's okay to just go on a vacation and do nothing, or go on a trip and just enjoy the beaches. Like in Costa Rica, I just went to Costa Rica a week ago, and it was really my trip to just relax. Like I didn't do a lot of things, but what I did do is I just enjoyed being in Costa Rica. I enjoyed being in the middle of the jungle. I enjoyed being by the beach, and that was more valuable to me than, trying every restaurant or doing all the activities. So just slowing down, I think, is the best way to plan that itinerary. Another thing to think about is when you're trying to think about like what to do on your trip, try to put yourself, I think, in cultural positions, because it's very easy to kind of be the tourist when you go, and there's nothing wrong with being a tourist, but I think that you will get more out of the trip if you expose yourself to the culture of the place. And that can be very simple as just like walking down the street. Um, Going to like a lot of the times, I remember when I went to Mexico, there's always like these live musical festivals. Like, oh, I remember, yes, live music. My first trip to Costa Rica, it was great because I had met a girl, and she was from London, and we're like, okay, we want to do something like culture. We want to feel like a local. Like, what do we do? Hi, Kim. What do we do? Um, yeah, so I went to Costa Rica and we are like, what do we do? You know, we want to like experience the culture of Costa Rica. What do we do? So we went to a live music event. Like, it was great. It was like this little bar in Montezuma, Costa Rica. I remember the waitress was like she was like so happy. She had like this big curly hair. She was wearing this yellow dress. And then like on stage was like this guy that it was like a one band guy. He was like playing like one instrument with his foot. He was singing. He had like a guitar in his hand, and he had all these other instruments that he was playing, like one of those little like ding ding ding. I don't know what it was called, but it was great. It was a wonderful like experience. And I think that if I just went on TripAdvisor and if I just went on TripAdvisor and was like, okay, top 10 things to do in Costa Rica, I would have never had that experience. So when you're planning your itinerary and you're trying to think about what to do on your trip, make sure you put yourself in something cultural. Make sure you try to emerge in the local culture, because you'll have an invaluable experience, or you just have an experience that you're not going to get if you just stick to the typical tourist activities. But also, it's okay to do the tourist activities. Just balance it out. Like, if you want to go ziplining, if you want to go whitewater rafting, like, it's okay to do those things. Tourism is actually really important to a lot of countries when it comes to their economy, and when it comes to making money. A lot of people in different countries really rely on tourism. So I think it's okay to do the tourism things, but balance it out. A lot of the times too, when I'm thinking about things to do, because you're by yourself, I think that's kind of, when you're with the group and you're traveling with the group, it's easier to kind of just do whatever the group does. But when you're by yourself, you're like, okay, I have a lot of time. I have, what do I do with myself? So I think that one thing that I like to do when I'm traveling by myself is kind of doing the things that I do at home in a new country, because it's a different experience. Like, I love taking yoga classes in different countries because, it's just a different perspective, different teachers. Sometimes it's in a different language, which is a lot of fun. So sometimes it's nice just to do what you do at home in this other country and kind of compare and kind of see like, okay, that was different, or that's what I needed, or that's what I liked. So when you're kind of thinking like, okay, what to do, just do what you do what feels comfortable to you. And I think that'll help. Another thing to do, because sometimes when you're traveling alone, you're like, okay, well, what if I get lonely? Like, what if I want to make friends? It's actually pretty easy to make friends. One easy way to make friends is to do a tour. My first trip to Panama, actually, I did a tour to like a monkey island, and we visited like it was a really nice tour. We like went to some islands, fed some monkeys. But I remember there was a girl that I was sitting next to, and I struck a conversation with her. She was actually from Chicago, Katie. We're now Facebook friends. And yeah, we started a conversation. We exchanged numbers, and then we went out for drinks that night. So it's that easy. So it's nice. So when you're traveling by yourself, sometimes you get worried because you're like, okay, I'm by myself. And especially too, because you want to go out at night. And I had those situations a lot where I'm like, oh, I want to go out tonight, but I want to go out by myself because I'm a girl. They're drunk guys. I don't want to deal with the drunk guys. So I always try to, when I'm out and about during the day, try to make friends with people that are other girls, people that are traveling. So that way you have like a buddy. That way you have someone to go out with. So if you are feeling lonely or you want to do things, but you're not sure, like if I should do it alone, you have that buddy. So try to do like a tour, or maybe you can go to so sweet. I was in Mexico and I went out for breakfast and I was asking the waitress about like how to get to a certain place. And she actually gave me her number and she was like, if you're free tonight and you want to do something, yeah, here's my number. Yeah, thanks, Kim. Yeah, exactly. And like Kim saying, a great way to meet like-minded people from all around the world. Yeah, that's true, because it's like usually the type of tours that you go on are people that like the same things that you do. Like I went on a tour of like monkeys because I like nature and I like animals. I went on another tour of San Sebastian when I was in Mexico, of like this old town, because I wanted to learn the history. So I met other people that were interested in history just like me. So yes, tours are the best. Okay. So I also wanted to talk about, and again, if you're listening to this, everything that I'm saying, I'm going to type up for you and put it like in a PDF and send it to you. So that way, you can just kind of have it in written form. I'll add in some extra notes too, because sometimes I think about things like after the fact. So I'll put in some extra notes for you to have that. But I wanted to talk about safety because I don't know how I convinced my mom to let me start traveling on my own, but I know she was definitely a person that was like very concerned about my safety. Still to this day, they're very concerned about my safety. So one thing, speaking of parents, one thing that you may feel comfortable doing or may not, is that when I travel, I always give my parents, or maybe not your parents, maybe a close friend, my itinerary, my flight number, where I'm staying. Like someone back home, I give them the information of where I'm going to be, because God forbid something ever happens. And my parents tell me this all the time. They're like, if something ever happened, we need to have some way to find you, some way to track you down. See, Kim says, I remember the best day I've ever had with a big group of people from my tour group. Yeah, Seven Falls. Yeah, it's amazing some of the people that you get to meet when you do a tour. And I think too, kind of connecting that with safety too, it's like you definitely have this sense of security when you're with the group. So doing tours, I think, really help because you get to see other parts of the country, and you get to also feel safe because you're like in a group and everyone's together, everyone's looking out for one another. So I think with safety, when you're traveling abroad as a woman, it's trying to put yourself in groups, so doing tours, being a part of a group, giving your information. Even one time, Jessica, you'll remember this, I was living in Panama, and I was going to visit some people in Peresi that I had never met before, and I met them like through a friend of a friend. And I even gave Jessica like the contact number of the person that I was visiting, because I was like, I don't know these people. I'm sure they're safe, but just in case they're not safe, here's their contact information. Here's where I'm going to be. So if you don't hear from me in a few days, then you have a lead. So I think that's a really simple thing to do, is like when you're traveling by yourself, give your information to someone. So that way, God forbid something happens, but there is a way to contact you. Let's see about safety. Also simple things like kind of knowing like the number to the embassy, knowing how to call for emergency. One thing that I do, every time I go somewhere new, the first day when I land, the first thing I do, if I land during the day, is I walk around my neighborhoods. I usually stay in Airbnbs. Again, especially if you're traveling solo, Airbnbs I highly recommend, because it's usually just a good person that, is renting out the room to make some money. they usually are people that are local. So Airbnbs usually feel safe too because it's like one other person. I think I feel safer in Airbnbs versus like hostels. Hostels are still safe too, but Airbnb, you don't have like hostels, you have like people coming in and out all the time. So you kind of have to be careful with your things. I remember I had friends that have traveled to like Europe, and they were doing their trip through Europe, and I remember them telling them they had to like get extra locks for their bags because they were staying in hostels and all that. So I think Airbnbs are a really good option. And if you have questions about that more, let me know. I can definitely give you like all the information on Airbnbs because that's what I do. But yeah, so knowing information of just like, how to call for help, where the embassies are, taking a walk around your neighborhood, wherever you are, just to kind of know where things are. Especially too, because there's been times when I will go out and I travel and I have to take like a taxi back, or the bus back. So it's a good idea to always know where you are and kind of know exactly like, okay, I live on this street, it's across from this building, there's a bank at the end of the street. Because a lot of the times this happened to me, taxi drivers, they act like they know where they're going, they think that they know where they're going, but they don't always. And I have had many times where like taxi drivers, like I tell them where to go, and maybe they misunderstood me and I ended up in some like completely different spot. So if you have an idea of where you are, you can kind of like help navigate yourself, or if you're taking the bus, you kind of figure out what bus to take. But always just kind of be familiar with your surroundings of where you're staying. And in general, my number one advice my dad tells me like almost every time I talk to him, he's like, always be aware of your surroundings. And it sounds simple, but when you are at a new place, like everything's new and exciting, and you're like, oh, this is pretty, oh, look at this building, oh, look at this flower. But you have to just always, always, always be aware of your surroundings. And if you do not feel comfortable in a place, then just leave. It's that simple. Yes. So always be aware of your surroundings. Blend in as much as possible. So don't, like when I travel, I try to, you don't need to wear like super fancy things, at least not on your first day. Just try to blend in. Don't, you don't have to walk around with like your Beats headphones, fancy jewelry, things like that. Because especially in a lot of places too, I remember I've had a friend who recently went to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, which is a beautiful place. But a lot of the advice that I was given to her, hola Carolina, hello. Oh wait, okay, sorry, pushing buttons. Yeah, she like a lot of the advice that people gave her about traveling was like, okay, don't walk around with your camera out, don't walk around with a lot of jewelry, so just don't make yourself stand out. I think that's the biggest thing. The good thing is that like people are traveling all the time. So it's not like you're going to be the only woman traveling to whatever city that you go to, but just try as you can not to stand out. And hide your money. So a lot of the times, they always say not to carry a lot of cash on you, which is good. But I like to hide my money sometimes. So like I might, like if I have an extra secret pocket in my suitcase, like I'll put money there, because God forbid like something happens and someone tries to rob you. For one, it's always, always, always better to just give the robber the money versus like trying to fight it or trying to run away. Just if they're asking for your money, give them the money you have, and they'll most likely leave you alone. But I also like to hide money, either like in my suitcase at home, in an extra compartment, sometimes in my bra. So that way, God forbid, like even if you lose something, if you lose your like purse or your wallet, like it happens, you have some extra money stored. In the event that you do lose something, always make copies or take pictures of your documents. Like have an extra copy of your passport, take pictures of your passport, your credit card information. So that way, if you ever get something stolen or lost, you have access to those really important documents. So that's the thing. Another tip too is I know that a lot of the times when we're traveling, we're trying to, budget and save money because you don't want to, you don't want to go crazy. However, always do not be afraid to spend extra money on safety. A lot of the times, like, when you're leaving the airport, it's very common to want to take the bus to wherever you're staying because it's cheaper. But if you get to your country and you arrive at like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, just take a taxi, take an Uber, whatever is going to get. There's been times where like I've been walking, I was trying to walk back home. I was trying to walk back to my Airbnb before night. It starts getting dark. I just end up taking the taxi. Because it's, like maybe, sometimes it's a little costly, sometimes it's a couple extra dollars, but it's far better. There's no price on safety. I always think it to myself, and I have this like debate sometimes back and forth. I'm like, should I pay the $10 for a taxi? Should I pay the extra $10 to get from point A to point B? But $10 in your life, you don't want to look back on the situation and been like, I should have just spent the $10 to get me somewhere safe versus putting yourself in a position where you could be in danger. So always just have some extra money, whatever your budget is on traveling. Also, if you need help on budget and if you need help with budgeting in travel, I have some resources for that too. But whatever your budget is when you're traveling, make sure you just leave and some extra for safety. So if you need to take that Uber, you need to take that taxi from point A to point B to get you somewhere safely, just do it. Just spend the money. Don't argue with yourself. Don't try to think like, do I really need the money? Yeah. Can I really spend the money on this? Yes, you can. Your safety has no price. Your life has no price. So do that. Okay. Another thing too is drop a pin on your location. I get lost all the time. Even places that I've been to. So I've gotten to habits of just like dropping pins. Like if I go to a coffee shop that I really like, I'll drop a pin there. So that way when I want to go back, I know how to get there. I drop a pin on my location where I'm staying. Google Maps is wonderful and has saved my life on so many occasions. And now Google Maps, I think, has lots of features where you can download the maps and look at them offline. So do that. Make sure you have Google Maps. If you end up in a country and you don't have most places that I've been to, and I think most places now have Wi-Fi. Almost every place that I've been to has some type of Wi-Fi, cafes, restaurants. So if you ever get into a situation where you don't have Wi-Fi, screenshot. I remember when I went, actually my first trip to Panama did not have a lot of Wi-Fi, and my phone service did not cover me in Panama. So I had Wi-Fi when I was at my Airbnb, and then I had Wi-Fi maybe if I went to a bar. But what I did is I just screenshotted places. Like, so if I wanted to go somewhere, I just took a screenshot of the place. So that way, if I got lost, I think it's a system where they're accountable. It tracks, you can follow the Uber. So like even when you're in the car, you can see where it's going. You can, if it's making too many different turns, then you kind of know something's up. But I think, if a lot of countries, Uber is not necessarily illegal. So I think if I had to choose between taxis and Uber, which I feel safest with, I think I would choose Ubers. But then too, like if you're getting into a taxi, just pay attention. Try to share a taxi. Like if you meet a friend or something, or if you have a friend with you, try to share a taxi, because I think if you're by yourself, you're a little bit more susceptible to things. But just take the Uber, take the taxi if it's late, especially if it's late. Just do it. Let's see. Yeah, I make copies of everything. Just be aware. I think the biggest safety thing is just being aware. When you're unaware, that's when things happen. And know that if you ever get into a position, know that your life is the most precious thing. So if someone's asking for a cell phone, if someone's asking for your camera, just give it to them. It's hard in the moment to give up something that you really like, or something that's important, but your safety is number one. So just be aware. Just be aware. Okay, so those are some of my tips for traveling solo by yourself, especially if you're a woman. Again, I'm going to type up all of this information for you and give it to you in a PDF. So if you would like the information about how to travel the world solo, globetrotting like a goddess, just leave a comment or send me a message, and then I can email you a PDF of all the tips and tricks that I have learned solo traveling and how to do it. I think that it can be misleading sometimes when you're like looking at Instagram and you're seeing there's so many women travelers around, so many solo women travelers. It's great, it's amazing. But I know that before I started traveling solo by myself, I was freaked out. I was worried. There's so many times that I thought like, this might be it. Like I might. What if I get kidnapped? What if I don't come back? Things like that. Yes, I will give you. Yes, I will send the PDF. So just anyone who's watching this, just send me a message or comment, and I'll give you like a PDF of all of the tips and tricks of globetrotting like a goddess, and to help you travel solo. I think solo traveling has made probably one of the biggest impacts on my life, and that's why I am encouraging so many other women to go out into the world and travel, particularly too. So many people have perceptions, especially if you're from the US. So many people have perceptions of women, of people from the US based on movies. I've had so many students, so many conversations about people thinking that Americans or North Americans were all like this, or we always do this, we are all rich, we are all this. So that's why I think it's so important for people, especially women, to get out there from whatever country you are, so that you can go and not only have these experiences, but just feel the personal growth that comes from traveling, to let other people in the world know that because if you're traveling, you are a representation of your country, you're a representation of your culture. So not everyone is fortunate to have the opportunity to travel. So when you travel, you're taking part of your hometown, part of your country with you, and you get to share that with the world. And I think that's amazing. Like I always feel so proud that I can, share who I am, share my culture with people. Might never get a chance to go to California, and I might never get a chance to go to the United States, and I get to at least show them what we're like, what it's like, what life is like around them. So, hi, Carrie. I think it's important, especially if you're a woman, to get out there and travel. And there's lots of different ways to solo travel. You can solo travel in a group. There's I think the first trip I did was a volunteer group to Costa Rica. I went by myself, but I met up with a group. So that was great because I was I think that's how I got my mom to let me actually start traveling by myself, because she was like, "What? Where are you going?" But knowing that I would, at least if I'm leaving by myself, at least I'm leaving with someone or leaving to a group. So Adele, hi. I like Facebook Live. Anyways, okay, to sum up everything that I said, and again, I'll be sending, if you want this information, everything that I just talked about traveling solo, I will send you a PDF. Just send me a comment or a message, and I will give you my tips and tricks about traveling solo. But when you're traveling solo, want to make sure that you choose a destination that feels right to you. Don't always listen to what people say about you should go there, you should go here. Think about what you want to gain from the experience and choose a destination based on that. Second thing, when you're planning your itinerary and you're trying to think about what to do on your trip, and you're trying to think about what to do on your trip, don't overdo it. Just pick one or two, maybe three things that you really want to do and just do that. Don't try to overdo it, because there's been times where I'm like, I want to do this and this and this and this. And then I spend an entire day just getting lost and trying to find my way back. So things happen. Don't overdo it. Hi, Michelle. Don't overdo it when you're trying to plan your itinerary. Just try to keep it simple and try to find that balance between doing all the touristic or tourism things and doing something that's like culturally sensitive or exposes you to the culture. Because it's very important, I think, it's very easy, I think, to just kind of sit behind the invisible wall of tourism and kind of just, and there's nothing wrong if you want to stay there, but I think that if you step out, going to a coffee shop, walking along the streets, having a conversation with a local person, those are the type of experiences that I think are going to open you up a lot more than if you just kind of stay to the typical tourism activities. Tourism is important and you should engage in it, but it should not be the entire focus of your trip. And then with safety when traveling on your own, just make sure that you are aware of your environment. Most of all, just making sure that you're aware of your environment. Making sure that you share your location with people back home so they know where you are. Give them your flight itinerary. I usually do Airbnbs. I always send to like my parents or a good friend, like, this is the Airbnb I'm staying at. So if something does happen, people have a way of kind of tracking where you have been. So thank you everyone who came on during the live, and thank you. I think I can save this recording, so if you're listening to this for a second time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. So those are my tips and trips. What did I just say? Tips and tricks of traveling solo. And if you're thinking about traveling solo and you have more questions for me, please do not hesitate to send me a message. We can do a Skype call. So anyone that is thinking about, or if you know someone that is thinking about traveling solo, please send them this video, share this video, or send them to me, and we can do like a Skype call and talk about how to get you on that plane and get you out of your hometown and get to know the world and explore the world. Send me your email if you like a PDF of all this information. Thank you again, everyone, for watching, and I will keep you updated on my next adventures.